Have you been looking for a way to stay focused on your goals and grow your MSP? Accountability groups from RocketMSP can help. We offer weekly accountability sessions that meet online with a group of your peers. Your success begins with accountability. Go to www.rocketmsp.io to join your accountability group today. To another installment of MSP webinars. I'm Steve Taylor, and today we have the pleasure of working with James Vickery from Benchmark 365. Sorry about that. And I can tell you that Benchmark 365, they do outsourced NOC and outsourced help desk. And today, James really wants to talk to you guys about how to use an outsourced NOC and help desk effectively, so that way you can cut costs, manage growth, and just run an effective business. So up on the top, you'll see a little chat bubble, so that way you can click on that, open up the chat box. Feel free to post your questions throughout, and as I see good questions, I will do my best to interrupt James politely and ask those questions. James, if you could please give us some background of yourself and why you started Benchmark 365, that would be fantastic.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me on as well. I've been looking forward to it for a couple of weeks. A little bit of background is that I've run an MSP for 15 years. We started out in Sydney, Australia. Started out a lot like a lot of MSPs, kind of not really knowing what we were getting into, not really realizing the late nights and weekends and all the stuff that you need to know to run an MSP. But somehow I muddled through that, got to about 2012, 2013, and did everything, right? We had our PSA, we had our RMM, we had all the tools, we had the pricing model that the market kind of told us to have. And I thought that, that was it. Like we kind of made it. But one of my frustrations is that we weren't scaling. So we weren't growing beyond kind of like $1 million, $1.5 million in services and hardware revenue after a decade. And so that was kind of frustrating for me, of kind of working so hard, trying to get this business from, like 10 people to 20 people and so on, where I saw other companies were able to do that. And so as much as I loved where we were at, I really wanted to take it to the next level, and had an opportunity to travel offshore, travel to the Philippines and learn about setting up a business at scale. The difference between these businesses and mine was that these businesses had 50 or 100 or sometimes thousands of employees. And it really got me wondering, why is it that MSPs don't scale, and why were these other companies in other sectors able to scale so aggressively? And that led to a journey of learning how to set up businesses offshore, learning how to manage people offshore, learning how to build a new culture. And effectively what we did is we built our entire MSP in the Philippines, which is no small feat, as anyone listening can imagine. But over the course of 3 or 4 years, we got really good at it, really good at it. And we're able to build a scaled company, effectively doubling year on year, and effectively being able to grow pretty much to any challenge that's been thrown at us since.
So you built out a full managed services company out of the Philippines.
That's correct. Effectively, it sounds crazy. Well, it felt crazy at times, trying to learn, trying to replicate what we were doing in Australia, and do that in the Philippines. And we learned not long thereafter that was actually a bad idea, to try to copy and paste what we were doing in one country and do it in another country. But we pretty soon learned that it was actually a game of scale. So let's take a standard managed service provider or IT provider. It often looks like this. If you're lucky, someone answers the calls and dispatches tickets. Not a lot of MSPs do that. Often the techs answer the calls. Sometimes the calls go to voicemail, right? That's kind of like, like a standard kind of look and feel of an MSP. And then 2, there's usually one or two level ones, one or two level twos, one or two level threes. And the problem with that is it results in one day customers are really happy, and then something goes bang, and the next day customers aren't happy. And it's that kind of inconsistency of service. We experienced this with our MSP, that if our dispatcher was away sick for a day, then calls got dropped, service levels went down. If our senior tech was away for any reason and we couldn't drag him out of bed, then systems would go down and it would take longer to fix. So what we learned in the Philippines is that why just have one person answering calls? Why not have three or four people, so that every single time the phone rings, 1, 2, 3, pick up the phone. And so there's always that instant customer contact. Every time a ticket comes in, respond to it as rapidly as possible. On average for us, it's about 5 minutes from time to call to time to dispatch. So we learned in the Philippines it wasn't about a copy and paste, like hire 3 or 4 people overseas. It was about adding redundancy into every function of the MSP. And we achieved that. It took a while, but we achieved that. Sorry, Steve, I've just lost your audio.
Did you hear me coughing and anything else I had going on here? So with all that, gosh, I don't even know where to begin, and it doesn't help. Nobody's asking questions. I'm shocked that nobody's asking questions.
Maybe I can. Sure, I can shout out a couple of common questions if you like. But no, yeah,
I'm just going to dive right in. I'm not even going to give you any easy ones. So the NOC and help desk, they're located in Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
So how's their English?
Great question. So first of all, just a bit of cultural understanding of the Philippines. Number one is the Philippines was effectively occupied, if you will, by America some 70-odd years ago due to issues in the region and so on. So everybody kind of learned English many years ago in the Philippines, and as a result of that, as a result of this kind of involvement from America, what ended up happening is schools were built that were, English-speaking schools, universities were built. And then in the 90s, what we started to have is, like companies like Verizon and AT&T setting up operations there. And that was kind of like where some of the bad impression about call centers came about was the 90s, right? Like 90s and early 2000s, really bad quality calls due to poor internet connectivity. And it's what we would call kind of like phase one of offshoring, where it was purely a price point. Lots of big companies went there and everybody was really annoyed with the quality. But that was 30 years ago, right? Like that was a long time ago. And since then, what's happened is the model has matured overseas. And of course, as we know, internet has gotten considerably better around the world. So there are large scale cabling, fiber services all running into the Philippines. So answering your question about English, most Filipinos speak English primarily as the day-to-day language. They certainly speak it at work. They mostly speak it outside of work because it's a universal language. Philippines is 7,100 islands, 80 different odd languages in the country. So it's actually easier to speak English because even someone in, say, the Visayas can't speak Tagalog. So they speak English to each other because it's simpler. Secondly, what happens is that English is spoken at school, it's spoken at work, and there's also a very strong American accent as well. So because of the American influence, it's actually quite weird.
To the next question is how is the dialect? What kind of accent do they have?
Yeah.
Is it going to be talking? Is it going to be like talking with a bunch of Americans, dumb Americans, or really smart sounding British guys? Because that's a big difference too.
You got it. The funny thing for us as Aussies is it's really weird because it's an American accent. To us, it's an American accent. It doesn't sound like other parts of Asia, like China or Vietnam and places like that, where there's that very strong Asian accent. You don't have that in the Philippines. It's very American. And there are different levels. So, of course, in our company, we look at English as a primary requirement of our candidate, right? Like they've got to speak English, and B, they've got to have been speaking it and have really good grammar, really good speech. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
With having really good grammar, I'd want them to understand how to speak English properly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'd also want them to understand when should I use a conjunction versus the two words, when should I use slang or whatever else.
Yeah.
When is the appropriate time to tell a joke and be lighthearted, that, and I feel like, when we start looking at the other side of the world, things are just different. I mean, not even language, but just societies are different.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's going to be a concern as well. And then someone did ask if you have any like recordings of calls that you could share, because Microsoft is one of the biggest companies in the world. Half their support staff, you can't understand it. He said half. I'm going to say 90% of their support staff, you can't understand a darn thing of what they're saying. And maybe India versus Philippines is going to be a big gap, or maybe you're just overselling it. We don't know.
All right, so let's go back to where we started here. So I've run an MSP for 15 years. We offshored our MSP 5 years ago, right? So that's a sustainable long time. So if this was like a really big problem, I wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Sure.
We learned two things. The first thing is, and I tell this story a lot, that I had all of these biases and prejudices and worries 5 years ago. And culturally, I don't think we're too different from
I just wanted to hit mute. I'm so sorry.
You wanted to smash something. So 5 years ago, we started this journey, had these biases, had these prejudices. And so what I did is I put a team in front of the Philippines. So I put an Australian team here, right here in the town that I'm in now. And I said, you guys answer the calls, you guys filter the jobs to the staff in the Philippines, and then they do the job, and then they filter back to you, and then you call the customer back, right? And you know what happened out of that? The customers were really annoyed because it was taking way too long to get things done. One day, there was an urgent client issue, and one of our Philippine staff picked up the phone. So he bypassed the Australian team, picked up the phone, called the end user, and fixed the problem in a couple of minutes. And that end user was the owner of one of our clients, picked up the phone to me and said, why isn't this guy the one that's just calling me and getting the problem solved? It was quick, he knew what he was doing, I got the issue resolved. And that was a big lesson for me, that we had these biases. This guy only cared about getting his IT problem fixed. He wasn't concerned about who was at the other end of the line, but rather what was the competency of the person at the other end of the line. So as a result of that, we started to look at this differently and say, the most important thing, the absolute most important thing in this day and age is the TTR, right? It's the time to resolve. How quickly can you go from that ticket being logged by your customer to someone either picking up the phone or responding by email and getting it solved? To me, that wipes out 90% of like, I didn't like that person because they had an accent, right? That's the biggest thing. So we focus heavily on that. How quickly can we take calls? How quickly can we respond? How quickly can we solve the issue? And our entire team is KPI'd on that, and along with customer satisfaction. So the other thing that we do is we measure everything with a CSAT score. I'm sure some of your audience are familiar with that. If you're not, you can check out things like Customer Thermometer, Smileback. Tools like that are amazing because they give you instant feedback. Currently, we're sitting at 45% response rate on tickets, and we have a 94% CSAT score. I think that CSAT score is better than what I had when we had purely a local team, because we're able to deal with things a lot faster and a lot more effectively.
Excellent. So when it comes to someone someone asked, what are the levels of interaction? So we understand how people will interact. Um, how does it work when we decide we want to engage with Benchmark 365? Do we have to let's just look at any other help desk. I don't even care. We don't even have to bring up a name of another help desk, but I know some of them charge per user, some of them charge per device.
Yep.
Some of them will make you support all or nothing in a company. Others will let you just do some things. Zach just brought up some charge per incident. Some charge in blocks. You have to buy blocks of time or blocks of incidents. So there are a lot of different ways to engage. And then there are even some that will only do like project work.
Yep.
Migrate from on-site Exchange to Office 365, that type of stuff. So what type of engagements are you guys available for? And how is that structured? Not even looking at the financials, just how is it structured to work with you?
Really good question. And as you said, without naming names, there's different players in the market, and they have different approaches. Some are endpoint based. Got to buy our software. Got to follow our process. And there are others that insist on designing your service delivery their way to deliver. We look at things differently. The way that we look at this is most MSPs have either just starting out, they have no staff, and the owner is overwhelmed and is looking around to maybe hire one engineer. As soon as that MSP hires that one engineer, their time becomes divided between running the MSP and also a little bit of HR. When they get 2 engineers, they've got a little bit more HR. When they've got 5, take it from me, it becomes a full-time job, right? Just managing staff. So the incremental scale of an MSP tends to result in more challenges around managing people, managing business processes, and that is why I believe, honestly, is one of the key reasons why MSPs don't scale is they're kind of chasing their tail, just learning how to manage people and how to get people pointed in the right direction. The way we look at it at Benchmark is that we give you a team. So it's effectively a turnkey service where we are an MSP, we understand the industry, we understand the product stack that exists in the MSP space. And so immediately we give you a team. It usually looks like, at minimum, a dispatcher and a first, second, and third level engineer that's in a pod. So they're your guys, and you can utilize them on an on-demand basis. So you're not paying for that, you're not having to scale up and hire 3, 4, 5 people, but rather as tickets come in, depending on the complexity and depending on the customer, for example, we will assign a team member to you. They'll work that ticket. If you don't give us any more tickets for the day, they'll move on to another account, another MSP, and they'll work on those tickets. So the pricing is based effectively on volume on an on-demand basis, because if you need it, and this is true in the Philippines, Australia, North America, it doesn't matter where, if you have to put a person on a seat, you're paying for them even when they're not billing, right? You're paying for them all the time. You're paying for them 40 hours a week. At Benchmark, we don't believe in that. We believe just pay for what you use. Underpinning that is, well, how do we cost that out? Well, effectively, it comes down to a range of things, a range of incidents, a range of hours, and the types of work that we're doing. So it's probably a little bit deep to get into on the webinar, but we're happy to send out information about that, and people can self-calculate and self-assess. Our number one goal is that no matter what we do, we come in at less than 50% of one full-time employee in any market in the world. But for that cost, you get an entire team. You don't just get one person. We answer the calls if you want us to do that. We provide first level support if you want us to do that. We deliver projects if you want us to do that. And the partner is in control of what we do, when we do it, and how we do it.
That sounds incredible. So on demand, I mean, you make it sound like you're the Amazon AWS of managed services outsourcing. And I see someone else, yeah, technicians as a service, someone just called it.
Yeah.
Now, so with that team, are we getting like, some people say, oh, we've got tier 1 and tier 2, tier 3, whatever. Like, can you realistically tell me what tiers of service you are able to provide?
Yeah, and I'll answer this honestly. In the Philippines, level 1 and level 2 are fairly simple roles to find. Well, maybe for us, we've got a bit of a tractor beam on attracting the best people in our marketplace. But level 1 and level 2 is pretty standard. When you get into level 3, there's a different definition of level 3 for every MSP that we speak to. Some people
True.
level 3 is like the guy that's doing like server rebuilds. He's doing accounts. He's doing a bit of account management. He's like running around dropping boxes off on site. He's just the guy that can laterally think and solve a lot of problems within the business.
Or maybe you're just really unlucky, and tier 3 is the guy that can reload Windows on a computer without asking you questions.
Right. That's right. So this is a very transparent and honest answer. So level 3 is hard to find kind of anywhere, right? In the Philippines, level 3 tends to be more specialized. So like a level 3 exchange guy, a level 3 SQL guy, a level 3 whatever, right? It's not as easy to find multidisciplined, multi-talented people in that marketplace. We're lucky. We do have a team of people that are, but when we speak to an MSP and they say, oh, can they do that thing? It's like, well, maybe not, right? If they haven't been fully trained on that particular product stack at that level, at the very, very senior level, then we'll honestly answer and say no. To combat that, what we've done is we still have a team here as well. So we still have an Australian team primarily made up of solution architects and senior engineers. So through Benchmark, MSP partners can actually leverage that team as well. If something gets beyond the standard first and second level support. One more thing I just want to say is, even I'm being honest because I don't want to overstate it, but I don't want to understate it either. Most stuff that we see on a day-to-day basis, like more than 90% of tickets, are handled by the offshore team comfortably.
And that's probably because a lot of tickets are, I don't remember my password, and why is this application crashing? And I mean, I think it's safe to say that as long as you don't need boots on the ground and as long as you have proper documentation, you can probably fix just about everything.
That's correct. What we find is that more than 60% of tickets are really fit into that first, maybe second level category across the board. And pardon the pun, but we've benchmarked MSPs all over the world. We've looked at the types of tickets that come in. We look at typically how long these tickets take. We know where the pitfalls are. We know where the quicksand is on those things. Level 3 tends to be something that it could also result in a sale. So if something hits a really complex issue, we might talk to the partner and say, what do you want to do about this? We can address it, but what do you want to do? And you say, no. We've told that client that we need to replace that service. So we don't want to invest 10, 20 hours fixing this problem. We don't want you to spend all weekend on this because we've already had a talk with that customer about replacing that link or replacing that firewall. So we work with the partner to just manage the expectation of the client and to address anything as it comes in.
Excellent. And so these people are, you said they're working as an extension of my team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as an extension of my team, how do they get access to stuff? Like, let's say we use IT Glue. How do we provide them with access to that documentation? What if we just use Word documents? We've got everything stored on our desktop, and we're just one guy, what if we have a PSA like Autotask? Are they going to work within our PSA? How familiar are your techs with all the different tools that are out there for MSPs to work with? Because I might be using Autotask endpoint management. We got Zach in here. He uses Solar Dog, Hound Max, whatever GFI is called these days. We got other people in here on Kaseya, LabTech, everything under the sun. Because as I think we've all learned, there's no one right way to do things when running a business, or else we wouldn't have nearly as many businesses out there.
Got it. I'm gonna talk about that first point you raised because it's my absolute favorite. What if we don't have documentation? If I had $1 for every time I've heard that from from an MSP, let me reassure everybody that's listening in today. It's not you; it's the industry. No MSP has 100% documentation. It's not possible. Every time we do our kind of initial engagement, we start talking to a partner. The first thing they say is, I really need to tell you something. We don't have enough documentation. So we're used to that. During our, maybe I should just quickly talk about how we engage. So we have a 3-step process of engagement. One is an onboarding. Takes between 10 and 15 business days where we do some data collection. We have a look at your PSA. We have a look at your RMM. More importantly, we have a look at your documentation and we do a review. So during that time, we might say, this documentation is okay. This documentation needs a little work, and we can work with you to just get the basics down. Even if it's just a high-level overview of the environments that we're likely to encounter, then we document that. We document a baseline for every client of yours that we're going to be dealing with. That happens during the onboarding. Then what we do is we go into a pilot, and the pilot is for 30 days. There's no ongoing commitment from partners beyond that. In fact, there's no ongoing commitment beyond that period. We work in a no lock-in basis, so it's month to month. During that pilot, when the tickets actually start coming in and the customers start calling, that's when we can identify that maybe there's a few other things that we didn't find out during the onboarding process, and we will stop. We will talk to you, the partner, about that and find out how to address this particular concern, because there's no password or the information that you provided, we can't log in. We never involve the end user in that process. So we stop, we have a back channel where we talk to the partner about that, and then we address that problem, we update the process, and we go forward again. That's been the way that we've addressed it, because if we were waiting for MSPs to document everything, we're going to be waiting a real long time. We're going to be waiting some months, if not some years, for that. So that's the best way we know how to partner. So we're given 2 steps. The 3rd step is an ongoing engagement. So we're going to hit our stride after the pilot. We're going to have a good knowledge. The team's going to have a good working knowledge of the customer stack, and we're going to be able to address most issues that way. And again, if we run into a problem, we'll stop, we'll talk to the partner. Management is very accessible with Benchmark 365. We're not Microsoft. We talked earlier about some biases towards Microsoft and the Indian call center. You're talking about a very, very large scale company that have distinct business processes that they have to follow. We're your partner, we're an extension of your team. So we don't have that rigid way of working. We have a tacit way of working, just like you do, and we just address things as they happen, and we work with you to improve it as we go. So hopefully that answers just the documentation side of it. Let's talk about PSAs and RMMs. Our approach at Benchmark is we don't want to upend the way you work. If you have a best practice, so if you're satisfied with your RMM, you've configured it to the max, everything's automated, everything's alerting at the right time, amazing. So give us a login to your RMM tool, and we will continue to run it the way that you run it. If you don't have an RMM tool, you can leverage ours. We use Kaseya. I know people have got different opinions about Kaseya, but we've had it for 10 years. We've customized it, and we're not a software vendor. We're not a Kaseya reseller. So if you just need it and you need 20 endpoint agents installed, we'll just give you 20 endpoint agents and we just charge you what it costs us from Kaseya. That way you're not committing to an RMM, you're not having to buy a product. So some people listening in might think that that's good because they're thinking about buying an RMM and haven't gotten to that stage yet. You just leverage ours with Benchmark. But if you do have your own, we're not going to change it. PSA is another beast altogether, as you can imagine, because if you have multiple techs in your system, then what we need to do during our onboarding is work out a ticket flow. We need to be able to process tickets. We've got a team and they've got a place where they need to work and enter time. So we have a system that we use to do that, but we can update your PSA as we go, or we can work out another process depending on the flow. It really comes down to the team dynamics. Some of our partners have no team, so it's simpler to just push through us. Some have a large team or have heavy customization, and it makes sense to push through you. So again, just kind of the philosophy is to work with you as a partner, as a labor force, and work with you in the most efficient way possible. Does that make sense? I can't hear you, Steve.
So my screen did weird things. I'm also trying to do tech support on this because some people complained about the quality. So I'm working with Henry from Demio to see if there's an issue or if it's just I don't know, but we'll figure it out. So that was a lot of information. So
Yeah.
it sounds like you guys are really able to provide literally every level of everything. If we don't have the tools, you'll give us the tools. If we have our tools, you'll use our tools. You just kind of handle it, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
The way we look at it, so again, being an MSP, being a really process-driven guy myself, I look at it like, okay, what's best practice or what's good practice? Because there's no such thing as best practice, right? Let's face it. There's good practice, and then there's better practice, and then it kind of it's a never-ending thing. For us, we feel that we've got a good practice in place. We feel that the way we do it in our MSP is right. But if we meet a partner and they're like, we do it this way, and we believe that's right, we will look at that. And eventually what it comes down to is efficiency, operational efficiency, and it comes down to labor. The biggest cost to an MSP is the labor force, right? The biggest cost. If you're hiring people, and I know you can automate stuff in RMMs, and I know that your ticketing system can, automatically do this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, what's that, sorry?
You can only automate so much.
You can only automate so much. So at the end of the day, a tech company is a labor company, right? Customer calls, some human typically has to deal with a problem and get it fixed. And so what we look at is, okay, is the system we're using driving labor cost up, or is it driving labor cost down? So when we're working with our partners, there's this saying, right? Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Everybody says they're automated, but when we look at it, we say it's automated, but you've still got 50 hours a week being spent on these particular tasks. So it's not fully automated, right? There's still labor going into that. We look at that as benchmark and we say, we believe we can drive operational costs down by X if we use a different system, if we use a different process, or if we just stop doing that, if we stop doing that thing. So that's kind of the way that we approach it, is that bring your system to the table, bring your process to the table. We'll do the same. Let's look at what's the most efficient. And then ultimately, the reason that we're in business is to grow and to be profitable. So let's look at the way that we can do that together. So sometimes that's kind of like where we spend our most time talking up front, if that makes sense, is kind of getting away from this tool versus that tool and down to what is the efficiency and what's the customer satisfaction as a result of that efficiency.
Excellent. So with that, talking about efficiencies, I know for smaller companies that maybe just have one or two people in them, one of the inefficiencies is, maybe they're on the phone or out on a call and they can't answer the phone. I would imagine that the help desk can take care of answering the calls and creating the tickets.
Yeah,
When
correct.
people call in and press 2 for support or whatever they do.
That's correct. So that's pretty fundamental to what we do. Sorry to cut you off. Go on.
That's okay. So with that, what if can we just forward the phones to you hypothetically? And like, what if some jerk salesperson calls up looking to sell me something or whatever? I mean, what do you do with those calls? How angry do you guys get when you're getting them?
First of all, and I think even one of my team members is on the webinar now. She's the softest, nicest person that I can imagine. So I've never seen any of my staff get angry at the calls. They're more than happy to take the calls. Everything gets logged, right? So if we get a call from a client, it gets logged as a ticket. It gets escalated according to whatever we've worked out as a arrangement between our partner. Typically, we will just execute the ticket and get it done. If a vendor calls, we will take a message and we will let you know that a vendor called, and I'm going to guess 9 times out of 10 you're not going to call them back. So you can just take a note of that. We'll take a note of that. Your doctor calls and says, "Hey, you need to come in. We've got your test results." We'll take a note of that. So it's fine. It's no different from having someone in your office taking the call. The only difference is that we can always take calls. We don't miss calls, and we don't have text answering calls, because this is a personal learning of mine, is that having text answer calls actually costs your business quite a lot of money. What tends to happen is that they answer the call. They're not billing for their time. So, fixed fee or not, your texts need to be utilized towards an agreement or need to be utilized towards billable time. If they're answering the call, they're probably like, that was just a phone call. So they spend 10 minutes on the call. That was just a phone call. Number one. Number two, they get distracted. We know that the brain, after it hangs up the phone, spends 5 or 6 minutes kind of looking around, wondering what they were doing before, eventually remembering, signing back into PSA and doing another ticket. What you want from your technical staff, and what I want from my staff as well, is effective utilization. So we want them to be able to move effectively from ticket to ticket without distraction. So whether, as a result of this webinar, people talk to me about benchmark, something I would encourage you to do is look inside your business at how many times your tech is distracted from actually doing what you pay them for, which is to do the tech support, which is to get the tickets done. So benchmark effectively takes that element out as a minimum. So you divert the number. We give you a dedicated number in your region. You divert the number. We know that it's your number that's calling, so we know who we're dealing with. We know that we're dealing with you or one of your clients, and then we take the process from there.
Excellent. So, do you offer? So you don't have text answering the calls. So you have. What do you give them as a title? Call answerer people.
Yeah, dispatcher, dispatch coordinator. We also have a quality assurance officer that may step in to answer calls to build the process, which is fantastic. Very strong English, parents English teachers, the whole 9 yards. Very, very, very strong on that front. We also have a client services manager who, if for any reason a customer, for example, gives a neutral or a negative survey, will actually ping back the end user and say, what could we do better? What happened? As you would know, running an IT provider, sometimes it's the customer. The customer got the wrong end of the stick there, and it was actually something that was a misunderstanding. We'll explain that and get the facts. If it was negative for some other reason, we'll address that. So we'll talk to our partner and say, look, we had some feedback from John at XYZ company, feels we could have done better here. Here's what we told him. Here's what we've done about it. Maybe you'd like to give them a little bit of love as well. That is way more than we ever had when we had just a localized team, by the way. Think about these extra heads that I just mentioned, extra dispatchers, quality assurance, client services. We never have in markets because it's just I wouldn't say never, but it tends to be a function of a multi-million-dollar business versus a smaller MSP provider.
Excellent. So now we got to get to the really tough questions. James, your website is very, very cryptic. Like,
Oh, that's
I
good
see.
feedback.
What was that?
That's good feedback. Thank you. What can we do better?
Well, I mean, it doesn't really tell me where you are. Where are you again? Australia, right?
Yeah, so I live in Australia for the time being. Born and bred here, spent a lot of time in the Philippines. Our entity, if you will, is Australian, and our company is based in the Philippines. So the bulk majority of our staffing and our operations are Philippines based. We're a global provider, so our website will say like, US, Canada, Australia, wherever. That's because we offer services to effectively every MSP in the world.
Um, Actually, I don't even see that. Like, I just literally see, you've got the FAQ, frequently asked questions. You've got the about, which is like, you know, hey guys, we are an offshore private label MSP. We're going to do a bunch of stuff. We know how to use all this stuff and look at all this other stuff we use. And it's like, nowhere does it say where you are, where your help desk and knock are, or anything, or what services are truly offered. Like, for example, do you guys have like maybe an answering only service without any technical stuff?
No, look, not at this stage. We thought about doing that, just doing that kind of first pass triage, but we really believe that the value we add is in augmenting the technical team. And I appreciate your feedback about the website, so it's something that we'll start to address. The other thing that we haven't talked about is that we are here to underpin the sales efforts of the MSP or an IT provider. And let me just walk through that very quickly. What we find is that whilst MSPs are struggling with delivery, something that they tend to really struggle with is sales. So even if delivery is under control, they might have a technical background, they might not have time to have thought about their pricing model or their marketing strategy. And what we find is once we get that kind of baseline under control, then we realize that there's another issue, that there's actually not enough new business coming in. There's not enough lead generation happening. There's not enough new business. So once we get a handle on the day-to-day operations of an MSP, we start to benchmark the volume of work. We start to benchmark the number of clients, and we provide statistics about that. And you can say that you are MSP A, and we believe that you're underbilling by 20% compared to MSP B that's based in across the street from you that is actually doing it differently. So a big part of what we do is not just answer the calls, do the support, but we're here to make sure that MSP is growing as well. And we want to work with MSPs that want to grow. And clearly we need to articulate that better on our website as well.
All right, well, let's ask the hardest question. What's it cost to use you?
What's it cost?
I imagine there's got to be a range. Like, it's not just a flat rate, or else that wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, correct. So I'll give you a very simple approach to pricing. We have a number of partner levels. Levels are effectively based on incidence and volume of work. We give a range so that partners can self-assess. Are we at 100 tickets a month, 200 tickets a month, and so on? Self-evaluate, run it through the pilot, see if those numbers stack up, and then we go from there. At a bare minimum, our cost is $9.90 for an onboarding. It's a 15-day engagement, and it's $9.90 for a pilot. With basically the approach that we've typically taken with that is to just hit us with what you've got so that we can analyze it and figure out where you fit moving forward. The goal being that we are never more than 50% full-time employee cost, but we give you a team.
And $9.90 what? US dollars,
Correct.
Australian dollars? Okay.
Correct. US. Yep.
What if they're in Canada?
US.
Okay, but you're not in the US.
No, we're not. But it's universal currency pretty much. It just seems more logical and simpler to administrate. Just using US dollars.
Probably because US is worth more, huh?
Not always. Not always. That worm can turn sometimes. But look, it just makes better sense. It's simpler to communicate, simpler from a billing perspective for everybody.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So it's I'm just going to round up because everyone likes round numbers, right? And it sounds scarier when I say it's $1,000, but it's practically $1,000. So it's $1,000 to
Yeah.
do onboard, and then you said it's 1,000 for a pilot.
Correct.
But I don't need to fly anywhere. So what? How long is a pilot?
The pilot's 30 days.
Okay.
Let's reverse it the other way, right? Let's look at the map. Let's look at most places in the United States, most places in Canada, most places in Australia. A good systems engineer, first level, $40,000 to $50,000 per annum, right? A level two, good level two, $60,000 to $75,000 per annum, right?
Oh no, I'm not arguing that at all. I don't think $1,000 is bad.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not looking at this as a bad thing, but I'm trying to figure out what is okay. So we're gonna get past the onboarding, and then we give you the 990 for the pilot, which is 30 days, and then after that, I assume if we are under the 100 ticket mark, it just continues to be 1,000 a month, or
Yeah.
what happens beyond the pilot,
Got it.
and what so for the onboarding and the pilot, what are we actually getting? Is that unlimited, all we can eat? You're just going to take everything we throw at you and it's all covered for the onboarding and the pilot until you figure out what we're actually
Well,
what we're actually going to need?
yeah. Depends on
Okay.
depends on the size, right? So if you've got
Sure.
10 engineers and you're doing 500 tickets a week or whatever, we're not going to go into a pilot and just take all of that on and happy days. It's not just because it would not be commercially viable, but B, we need to scale up to meet that particular demand. So
Sure.
what we look at is what's a fair and reasonable approach for a pilot, or you want to call it a trial. And we give a lot of value during that stage. We understand that there's some learning for our partner, and there's some learning for us. Ultimately, where do you end up is up to you. Do you want us to do all volume? Then we'll provide a range of volumes for the partner to choose from, and we will just stop at that volume, or we will manage that volume for you. Some partners have, and there's a case study on the website where a partner had outsourced everything to us because he now focuses primarily on sales. So he's doubled his revenue in 12 months, focuses on sales. And for him, it's not a question of what does benchmark cost, but effectively to deliver the same volume of work, he would need 3 people in his company, right? So we look at it as, well, we would not come in anywhere near those 3 people. The reason that I sort of jumped out of my chair at the $1,000 thing is sometimes I think one of our challenges in communicating benchmark is we're not a software vendor, so we're not selling a tool per endpoint that's $5 an endpoint or $25 an endpoint. It's a labor service, and what we're here to do is reduce overall labor cost for our partners, ideally by 50%. Often it comes in at even less than that.
Okay. And I don't think anyone is in disbelief about that. I think what we're just trying to figure out is so I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. That way, if in 2 weeks from now someone says, "Hey, how's that guy do the pricing over there?" I can sound like I'm not a complete idiot. So,
Cool.
all right. So you have tiers, right? So and it's not good, better, best. It's volume, right?
Correct. It's volume.
Okay.
Yeah. And if any of your
so
if anybody listening in wants pricing, it's something that we're just happy to send over. So we have an information pack that we can send. We usually do a little bit of triage, if you will, around volumes before we just say, here's a price. We just want to make sure that we understand your needs correctly, and then we are happy to share that information. You can contact us via the website, which Steve has pointed out needs an update, or you can just contact me directly, which is james@benchmark365.com.
And is that, you said that's something that you give out? I mean, I'm just going to throw out there. If you click the little button in the bottom right, it says go backstage.
Yeah.
And then there's a section called handouts. You could hypothetically drag that file into there and let people have access to that from here. Obviously, I know you're trying to build your sales funnel, but
yeah.
There's just still a lot of mystery, and I think a lot of people, and I'm looking in the chat, and a lot of people are saying, okay, he's still building value. He's still trying to prove to us that his pricing is stellar, and that we're going to get everything that it's worth. And I think that's the part where it's not that we don't believe you. We just want to know the price.
Right.
And beyond that, like, okay, so let's say I'm on the smallest tier volume. Do I stay at $1,000 a month?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So our minimum tier is $9.90 per month.
Okay. So, and that's for 100 tickets a month?
Yeah. So I don't
I'm just trying to
in front of me, but
I'm super small. Okay. So I'm just looking at this for me right now. Yeah. Okay. So it's $1,000 a month for up to 100 tickets. And what do you guys consider a ticket? Is a ticket something that goes from dispatch to a technician, or if that pesky sales guy from ConnectWise calls and they make a note and just, I don't know if they email me or whatever, is that a ticket?
Yeah. So we look at this like this. How many dumb tickets do you get a day, right? You get a whole bunch of, NOC tickets that can probably just be closed. It might take a minute to close those. You might get, as you say, pesky sales emails sent through to your support email. What we're ultimately looking at is, what is the labor? What's involved in this? If it's 100 incidents that are real incidents that we have to address, and it fits within what we would call a fair use policy, then that's fine. If it's a bunch of dumb tickets, we'll just close them. We're not going to say, hey, we need to upgrade you to the next level now because of this. Everything will just come down to labor. At the end of the day, it will come down to, if we're spending, if the average MSP 100 tickets is X number of hours per month, but, every ticket we come across is, for whatever reason, convoluted and complex, we'll talk to you about that because it's got to fit within a fair use range. The bottom line in this is that we're a partner. So the idea is that we're able to meet the demand, and that's effectively when it comes to pricing. There's always going to be some questions around, well, what if we hit 101 tickets? Well, if you hit 101 tickets, we'll apply some fair use variation. We might say, look, you're not more than 10% over your plan, so let's just keep it at that. Let's not change it. If we're growing, so you're going from 100 tickets to 200 tickets, the question that we would put to you is your business growing, or are we just seeing an excessive amount of volume this month? If your business is growing, let's assign some more resource to this so that we can grow with you and your business can grow. What we don't want to see is businesses going down. We want to see the volume going up.
Sure.
Because that means, ideally, that means you've got more customers.
So with that fair use logic, so let's say on average, and this is probably close to accurate for my business anyway, let's say on average we get 50 tickets a month.
Yep.
And then I go and I do a big server upgrade for a client, and I want you to help with that.
Yep.
Are you going to be able to do some of that help within that scope of $1,000, or is that above and beyond?
So I think the question was that you've got a server. Was it a server rebuild or a server?
just a server upgrade, like migrating from one server to another. Like obviously I would go and do the physical moving, but
Yeah.
if it came to, hey guys, it's like 100 gigs, can you just migrate it over tonight at 3 in the morning, that kind of thing, and
Yeah.
make sure that you have the domain controller migrate all the FSMA roles and all that stuff. Like, what kind of stuff is deemed a project versus a ticket, or do you not really have that defining line?
Oh, there's always a defining line, right? Obviously, there are projects that require scheduling, maybe senior resources involved, maybe some customer communication and engagement. We would imagine that most of our partners wouldn't just say, "Oh, by the way, we've got a server migration tonight. Here's a ticket. Get it done." So yeah.
So I shouldn't do that. Got it.
No, so we look at that. We would look at that as a project. We would have a project team assigned to that. But by the way, that's not an issue technically for us to deliver. It's pretty common. Also, 365 migrations are very common. In fact, they're a daily affair in our business these days. We would treat that separately. We would treat that as a project. We would come to you prior to that project being executed and obtain a scope of work from you so that we know exactly how you want it done and what you want done. Sometimes our partners say, can you develop the scope of work? So we can actually engage our team to develop the scope of work, have you sign off on it, maybe you need to go and get the customer sign off on it, and then we'll deliver the piece of work.
And that was going to be my next question was, what if a customer comes up to me with something I've never done before, and it's something that's a reasonable request. It's within the scope of what you guys normally do. I just have no idea how to do it. Is that something I can say to you guys? Hey, I have my customer needs this done.
Yep.
Can you help me figure it out?
That's really common. That's actually really common, by the way,
Okay.
and is often like, think about how big this industry is, right? And how many different products there are out there and how many different applications there are out there. There is no one all-seeing, all-knowing Oracle MSP. So it is actually very common for a partner to come to us and say, look, I think the client needs this, or they've asked me for this. Have you guys done one of these before? And of course, if we have, we will pull out our process and our scope, if you will, of what we've done before, and underpin you. So you will give you something that you can take back to your client and make you sound like you've done this before, because your team has, effectively your benchmark team has done it before, and we can deliver that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So just to clarify for Zach, maybe he missed it. Projects, even if I'm well under my actual usage for my fair use on the 100 tickets, projects are always above and beyond and are an additional cost.
Yeah, so that's a really good question, by the way. It's something that we think about a lot. First of all, we haven't found too many partners that fall significantly under tier 1 level, meaning that they may, for example, have fewer tickets, but they might have a higher labor volume, or they might have a higher a higher ticket count and a low labor volume. But going back to the fair use thing, we look at different vectors, and this is why it's hard to just say, here's a price sheet, off you go, because I think sometimes it needs a little bit of hand-holding to understand how we do it and how it actually works out fair for the partner, and also a win-win between our two organizations. So sure. I'm more than happy just to clarify, to share pricing, but I feel that it warrants a discussion with the partner to really convey this in terms of the size of their business and what they need at this stage of the game.
I think that sounds reasonable. I mean, we have a base, and that's the important part. We're just trying to figure out what the base was, and we have that number. And I'm not made of money, but I would say I'm comfortable with that number. It sounds reasonable, especially for the fact that includes up to 100 tickets. We haven't really figured out like how many. Because I'm sure there's more metrics than simply how many hours is considered fair use. Because it could also be, was this tier 1 hours or tier 3 hours? I have to pay those people differently. I know that there's a lot of different metrics involved in this for you.
Yeah. So
Ballpark, what would you say on average your existing tier 1 customers use when it comes to tickets and time involved on tickets?
let me just go back to what we talked about in fair use. So I will share the fair use link with you, and you're welcome to share that out as well. Fair use is a number of things, right? Let's think about what happens day to day. You've signed a managed services contract with a 10-user site. Awesome. Maybe you're charging them $1,000 a month, maybe more, maybe less. What are some of the things that result in that not being commercially reasonable for you? One is unreasonable expectations of the client. So the client says, every day at 9:01, I want you to call and I want you to do this, this, and that. And that contract becomes unviable because the demand is an unreasonable expectation. Excessive hours can be an unreasonable expectation. Lack of documentation and not constructive way of dealing with that can result in some fair use issues. For example, guys, just go and figure it out. I don't have a document. I don't have the password. Go and figure it out. Fortunately, as I said, that doesn't actually happen with our partners, but these are some of the things that are stipulated in fair use. What you asked, what is the average kind of usage in terms of hours versus tickets? We talked a little bit about that before. So maybe 60% or more of tickets are fairly simple first level, maybe bordering on second level support. You would know from your own stats that these are less than an hour to do. Some are 5 minutes, some are 15 minutes. What we do for our partner is we display all of that on a dashboard that they can see. So in real time, they can see the time that we're putting into the tickets. They can query the time that's going on to a particular job, like, hey guys, why is this one taking so long? And we can flag in which vector this is causing a problem for us. Maybe it's an issue with accessing the customer site. Maybe it's a documentation problem. Whole array of things that go on here. So what we try to do is give you a range, not hold you to the minute, but it effectively gives you a baseline that you can work from, that you know what your staffing costs now are. And it's probably a darn sight better than figuring out whether your staff are billing, more than 60 or 70% of their time, because we provide it to you in a visible way.
Got it. And then since we're able to literally throw everything at you, Zach said the most common project that he does is onboarding new customers. So for the sake of argument, let's say it's 15 seats, 3 servers, 2 access points, a switch, a router, and 3 printers. I assume they're all network printers. Is that something that your guys we can just say, I don't really feel like documenting this. Can you guys just do that?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. What I would ask Zach in terms of an onboarding is, what is your average onboarding time? How much labor do you spend, or do your people spend on onboarding a new customer?
Well, I think with the scope of this, it would literally be, we've gone on site, we've deployed the RMM, we're taking care of the hands-on stuff, the working with the customer stuff, and training them, and we just want your guys to, and I would assume it could probably even be a tier 1 person, assuming they know how to read and write. We just need someone to go through the RMM and make sure that everything's being documented correctly in the IT Glue or IT Boost or Word or whatever documentation system we use. What passwords are there? Because we probably have gotten some type of sheet, I would assume, from the customer. Hey, I need all these passwords from you, and we get all those passwords on the sheet. We need someone to put it in the IT Glue and make it look good. We need all of those items to be linked up with the correct items and users and everything else in IT Glue.
Okay.
Are you guys still able to hear me? Because my computer is doing crazy things again.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, good.
Really, really simple, quick answer. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Well,
is that a project or is it 5 tickets?
I wouldn't have thought that that's a project. I would think that that's a ticket. If it's a lot of documentation, let's start again. And this is why I asked what's involved in this.
Right.
We work to your process. You're not
Okay.
working to ours. If you're lacking a process, you can use ours by all means. But we work to your process. So if you said to me, look, we just got like a standard process where we get a new customer, which by the way, we need to know about the new customer. It's kind of like we're your team. So we would need to know we got a new partner, a new customer starting next Monday, and we need to onboard them and we need to go live with them. So we need it to be very professional. So we need to go through an onboarding process. You onboard and we onboard to make sure that we can service them effectively and we're delivering to your standards and to what expectations you've set with your client. So, to us, that's just fundamental. I mean, we're part of the team. So it's not about whether it's a project or a ticket. It's about, great, we've got another customer. Let's get them onboarded so that we can deliver effectively. And we would be saying to you, when are you going to get your next customer? Like the whole driver for us is, when are you going to get the next customer? Because we've freed you up from doing all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And that's good. So, and so it's fair. Obviously, you are helping us by doing all the tedious work. is really what we're looking at. It's almost like tedious busy work. It's borderline administrative work. When I'm talking about literally just going through and making sure all the links are set up correctly with the documentation and passwords and whatever else. So it would be a team-based onboarding. I would think that we're doing all the heavy lifting and all the thinking, and your guys would be just more or less making sure everything is inputted correctly into the systems. So, and that brings another fair point. Obviously, the size of the new customer, the process we use, all of these things are determining factors of how long some of this stuff takes. And I get that. I was just trying to figure out, like, if it's a small customer, and small to me being like 10, 15 or fewer, something like that, as far as users, is just helping make sure that everything's documented correctly. Is that a project or a ticket? And it sounds like you said that sounds like it would be a ticket. Obviously, if we're onboarding 50, 100, 200 seats, that's a project. And I get that, because that's truly a project.
Yeah. Look at it this way. It's got to be mutually beneficial, right? Like,
of course, you're in business to make money too. I get it.
Oh no, I don't even mean it like that. And but yeah, I appreciate it. What I mean is that, why would we want to say, oh look, no, we're going to have to charge you $1,000 to do that? You're bringing on a new customer, but you haven't even made your first dollar out of that customer, and we're turning around and saying, boy, we've got a big opportunity to claw some money out of your pocket on this. What I would look at from a fair use perspective is, I would say, okay, partner's getting a new customer, awesome. Partner needs a little bit of documentation done. Looks like it's going to take an hour or two, fine. But like you said, Steve, if there is lots of things like that in a month, then that would be cause for a discussion to say, guys, you're really growing. The number of hours is incrementing up. The number of tickets is going up. And we think it would be more appropriate, in order for us to do our job properly and for us to provide you with an effective team, that this might fall outside of your current level agreement. And we would recommend that you upgrade. You don't have to, but we recommend you would. Or we need to treat this like a special case or a special project. And I think that we all do that in managed services too, right? Like, we have loads of customers in managed services, and they're all fine, like they're okay. But every now and then something happens that it's like, we didn't really think of this when we came up with this fixed fee process for that customer. And we have to go and talk to them and say, look, this is a weekend job. It's going to take 20 hours. It's, we've got to engage people on weekends. It's not falling under your MSP contract. So we think the same as you and we act the same as you, as what's fair and reasonable, what becomes a challenge from a commercial perspective. And we haven't had any
Right.
we haven't had anyone say that sounds unreasonable. Does that make sense?
Well, and it doesn't, because let's say I bring on 10 new clients at we'll say they're small clients, right? And we'll say that on average it's $1,000 a month MRR. If I just brought in 10 grand of new monthly recurring revenue, chances are I'm going to have you doing a lot more work. So if I need to bump up to the next tier, I guess the way I'm looking at it is, duh. So, I mean, that doesn't sound at all unreasonable to me.
Yeah.
Jordan
So
said,
what
sorry,
people
go
tend
ahead.
to be fearful of is that they're going to get gouged, right? But remember, our reputation is absolutely paramount. We don't want a situation where people go out and say, "Hey, benchmark is too expensive." They're every time something comes up, they're charging us. We don't want that. What we want is a partnership. What we want is for it to be a win-win between the two of us. So I understand the questions because I can see how this has happened in the industry a lot. But also, I think,
unfortunately, we as MSPs have dealt with a lot of, what's the technical term? Bullshit. We've dealt with a lot of bullshit. We get nickel and dimed at every turn.
yeah,
And we just feel like, I get it. You're not a not-for-profit, okay? You are a for-profit business. You have a right to go out and make yourself a lot of money, and I get that. And when, as an MSP, I have on average 70% margin. Let's be reasonable, right? I get that all you're asking is for a small chunk of that. Um, so I think we can all agree on that. Is that accurate, attendees? That we can all agree on that. What we don't agree on is, when you've got help desk companies that it feels like their goal is to answer the call and see how quickly they can pass the ticket back to us to have us work the ticket for whatever stupid excuse they came up with. Um, we don't like spending our money on something that's not actually bringing us value,
yeah,
and that happens to us a lot more than we care to admit. Um, I've said before in other webinars, I'm the guy that has used every PSA and RMM tool at least twice. Uh, I have a problem, okay? Uh, um, someone brought up, and what was that?
Is there a support group for that somewhere?
There probably is. I'm sure of it. At ASCII they beat me up. In Discord they beat me up. Everyone's always asking me what tools I'm using this week, and that's why I started doing webinars, man. Because I've literally tried it all. Why not just tell people about it, right?
Yeah.
So, so with that, there's an RMM company out there that has a help desk and NOC available to you,
Yeah.
and Zach even said they'll actually resolve maybe 20% of the tickets they get. And that's both on the help desk and the NOC side. Like, I feel like the help desk, at least they were in America. I felt like I could, they could relate with my customers. The NOC was in like the boonies of India, and it was not the best experience, because like a NOC engineer would call me at 3 a.m. and say, "Hey, this customer server's down," and I would say, "It's 3 a.m. I don't care." And I'd hang up on them, and they'd keep calling me because the server's down. Like, I don't have a key to this place. Leave me alone. And I feel like they didn't have any logic. They just wanted their hands held, and they wanted to pass things on. And it was like that with literally every other outsourced help desk and NOC service that I've used. So with me, I'm skeptical. Everything that you've said sounds like you have taken the whole outsourced NOC and help desk and just flipped everything upside down, and you're almost like disrupting that market, and that's good, and I'm excited, but I'm still hesitant. My guard is still up, and I'm sure a lot of people are feeling that exact same way.
Yeah. So this is something I'm pretty passionate about, as you can gather. First of all, I told you how this journey started, right? We went offshore, set up a team. Make it, it's like a soundbite, right? We just went overseas, we set up a team, and here we are today. We tried like a whole bunch of stuff, and one of them was a NOC based out of India. I won't name names. And it was a disaster. What we found is that there was no accountability, right, at all. And everything was escalated back to us. So we would wake up in the morning and see that, oh, hey, we got a ticket and we need you to work on it, right? And it was like, well, why are we paying for this service? It was just an absolute waste of time and money. And yes, sometimes it looks cheap, but it was just kind of like this. We thought that it would take work away from our guys that were on call. And all that was happening is that they were just there was just an extra step in the process. Like, what a waste of time. What an absolute waste of time. So when we experienced that, and it was pretty poor and the communication was pretty poor, we said, look, we just cannot go with this service because it doesn't offer enough breadth for us to deliver our services to our clients. And we eventually, after a couple of years and a few grey hairs that are appearing now, we eventually built our own team out. So the difference between Benchmark and a NOC is that the full gambit of services are there. So if a NOC ticket actually turns into a customer incident, these guys are all in the same team and they're working that issue through to completion. That's a first. The second thing is, how would it benefit us from a growth perspective to escalate everything back to you? Like, it would keep us at a low level engagement with you, which is not our priority. What we want is partners that are doubling year on year, which we have a couple of good examples of that occurring at the moment. Why would we want to be like, oh, hey, we only did 10 tickets for you this month? It's crazy. What we're looking at is our closure rate. We're looking at the success of Benchmark for you. And if we see that you're now going, oh, hey, we got to hire more people in our company, in your company, because Benchmark isn't delivering, then the whole service unravels. It's a disaster. It would be a disaster for us. So that's not our focus at all. So we're not just a NOC. We're not in India. Not to cast any aspersions, Steve, on that, but we're not in India. It's a totally different play to what you're seeing out there in the market previously.
And this is gonna come full circle back to that down server, okay? So do you guys help configure the RMM if you see something seems misconfigured or anything like that? Or do you have any best practices? Yes, I will get to compliance, Bill, I promise. Best practices as far as how an RMM should be set up, how monitoring should be done, how updates should be done, how to set up maintenance modes and all that stuff, so that way if it goes down for updates, you know, and it's not just a down server. Can you help set all that stuff up?
So we've got a alert, right, and the server's down. Is that correct?
Yeah. Remember, I got that phone call at 3 a.m. Server's down. Server's
down. Yeah. So we don't just have like a NOC guy there that just looks at the ticket, escalates it. There's a team there, so they're going to investigate. Why is the server down? What's happening? Who is the contact point potentially on site that we need to talk to if it's a physical issue? If we need to contact you, it's because we require an on-site engineer or we can't get the server back up online. So absolutely, we just run that through the same way that you would in your team. Same structure, same technical capability. We would try to fix it, and if we ran into any roadblocks, usually because the thing's dead, we would call you and say, hey, you've got a type 1 and you need to get someone out on site.
Right. So, but will you like, for example, will you look at Kaseya or LabTech or insert here RMM tool and say, okay, I see the server's down and it looks like it actually was rebooted successfully after doing some updates. So it doesn't have the maintenance mode configured correctly, which is why it started creating tickets.
Yes.
Would you then say, hey, Steve, can we reconfigure your RMM tool to add some things so it creates less tickets?
Yes.
Okay. So you have best practices available for how an RMM should be configured and would be willing to help make changes with all that type of stuff.
Yeah. So if we're seeing, for example, monotonous tickets coming through every day that are meaningless and not giving us the information that we need, we're going to come back and talk to you about that. We have a monthly review. Because keep in mind, right, we've only talked about some very peripheral things like how many tickets a month, how many hours a month, how many, blah, blah, blah. Remember that we're looking at all of this data, right? Like it's our business. It's our business to look at what's happening every day on the ground and to make changes and adapt to our partners to meet their demand. That's in our best interest. So we will do a review, and if we find that there's something that really isn't working well in the RMM or really isn't working well from a support perspective, we'll talk to you about it. We'll give you our advice, and with your permission, we'll implement it. What we won't do is implement any change in your environment or your customer's environment without your permission to do that, obviously. So if we identify any form of change request, or if we feel that we need to trigger a change request, we will stop and get authority before we action that.
Perfect. There's more comments in here, but I want to get to this because it's important. Are you able to be compliant? So let's say I have clients that are in the financial industry or in the legal industry or any other industry where there's HIPAA, SOX, FINRA, the one that starts with a G that I can't think of, GBLA or something like that. What can you do there?
Okay. We've had conflicting advice on this matter, and I think it depends on who you talk to, but let's just talk broadly about compliance. You're not offshoring any data with us. We're not downloading any data from you or your client systems. We're providing remote support. We're logging in with the tools that either you provide to us or the tools that we supply, and we're logging on and doing remote support. So there are different viewpoints on this. Some just say absolutely not. It's not 100% compliant, and we're not going to do it. And to that we say that's fine. That's disappointing for us, but we respect that. For others, they've done research, they've sought some legal advice and found that because we are not an offshore, say, cloud provider or an offshore backup provider, we are an offshore support provider, that there is no compliance issue with that so far as their advice and to a certain extent our advice as well. What it
sounds like is some MSPs have done research or maybe just not done research and have determined that they're not comfortable using you for anything that would be compliance driven because you are offshored. Others have determined that because the data is keeping its sovereignty, wherever it is, it's staying there, and all you're doing is providing remote support, that their legal counsel has advised that you would be compliant.
Correct.
And it sounds like you're not going to tell us a definitive yes or no. You're probably going to say, do your own research and have your own attorney draw that conclusion, so that way when you get sued, that same attorney can be the one that helps you. Is that accurate?
100%. Good insight there. So for me, it's seek your own advice. The crazy thing about some of these compliance laws is you take a trip to Mexico, you log on to one of your customer servers. Technically speaking, you may be non-compliant, depending on depending on where you get your advice. So I think that you need advice pertinent to your industry and pertinent to the compliance that needs to be met. I can see a future where Benchmark offers that as a certified compliance that will require continued growth within our company. I can see that happening in the future, but for now, what we're here to do is to help MSPs with their help desk support and help them with their sales and their profit.
And would you guys be willing to sign a business associate agreement, BAA, for HIPAA compliance?
Again, yeah, subject to any advice that we receive on that, I believe we would. I can't see an issue. Maybe another elephant in the room is we often have a question about, we don't know who you are, we don't know who the staff are. We're talking about a very mature middle-class employment market where we're based. People that drive cars and have iPhones and go through a normal reference check, have worked for companies like, IBM.
Lexus. They have iPhones in the Philippines?
They have iPhones. Well, it's surprising that I see, my team walking around with like the latest iPhone, and I'm like, I don't even have the latest iPhone. I'm still on the last version. But I think there's this misconception that it's like, some random, island in the middle of nowhere, and that people are working from home. Yes, sure, that happens, but no, this is a corporate office with proper recruitment processes, proper compliance, confidentiality agreements signed, and none of our people would be willing to risk their reputation, their employment reputation, on breaching anything from a compliance perspective. So in answer to your question, yes, if someone wants to send us an agreement, we will review it, and if we can get our highly expensive lawyers to sign off on it, then we will sign it. Absolutely. I'll do everything in my power to break down those barriers.
Excellent. And just to clarify, going back to some of these other statements here, Justin said, it'll be interesting to see if this business model is successful. It seems to me that their offering is a bit too wide, which may be a downfall. Specializing in ticketing help desk for a fixed monthly fee based upon clients served seems like it would be the sweet spot. Including projects or onboardings seem like it's opening a door to disaster as far as pricing and expectations goes.
Yeah, so I don't think we ever said we include projects. There was a specific question around a small micro thing that needed to be done, might take an hour or two. And I said that if it falls under fair use, then by all means, we'd get it done. Projects are separate, need to be scoped out. We charge for projects, and you would agree on that, and it would be at a fraction of what you would it would typically take for you to deliver it locally there in the States or here in Australia. In terms of the scalability of the model, something that we've put a lot of thought into. First of all, where I see, not to mention any kind of competitors' names, but where I see is the scale is way too vast. So there's 500 people, 700 people, and you could get a different person every day of the week, right? So what we do is our team are broken down into pods, or what you might refer to as two pizza teams. So they're only assigned a limited number of accounts. They're only trained on those limited number of accounts. So we're not just giving them like a whole bunch of broad knowledge across multiple partners. We train them so that they specialize in those partners. And we believe that is quite scalable. It's working well so far. It's always going to be a challenge. And the only commitment that I can make is like that this is my life. Like I'm so passionate about this. I've been doing it for long enough. We come up against obstacles and we fix them. If I could share half the problems that we've had this week in sort of growing and scaling a business, we'd need another several hours to talk about it, and I might need but this is like, I am so determined, so passionate about this industry. What frustrates me the most about this industry is this IT services industry is a $96 billion global market, right? And yet, day in, day out, of the thousands and thousands of MSPs that I meet, I hear things like either A, there's not enough work, or B, we can't deliver the work, right? How crazy is that when there's $96 billion of services out there to be delivered? Get it, some of that's enterprise and some of us guys aren't playing in that space. But that is a big market. That is a really big market. Yet most MSPs struggle to make it past $500,000 or $1 million a year in annual revenues. Very few make it beyond $1 million in annual services revenue. And I've got the data to show for that. And the reason for that is that they struggle to deliver. And what we're trying to do is provide a solution for that. So, the phone is answered, right? Great. First, second, third level support, done. Great. Projects are delivered. Great. Can we do it all? You might say no. And you might need to augment with us. You might need to keep a couple of people that can do very specialized stuff. We're never going to do on-site for you. I'll just put that out there right now. We're never going to be able to come fly on out and drop a box in. That's what you're there to do. We're never going to account manage your client or sell to your client. That's what you're there to do. So I hear that worry. Leave it on my shoulders. I'll take care of it.
Fair enough. How long has Benchmark 365 been around?
We did our first pilot with a company called Infinite Edge. You can check them out on our website.
They're your case study, yeah.
Case study. So we did our first pilot with Martin from Infinite Edge in May or June of 2016. That pilot was incredibly successful, and we launched Benchmark not long thereafter.
So you've been live for over a year now.
Yeah, about 16 months. Yep.
Okay. And how many engineers or technicians of all the different tiers and all that, how many employees do you have that are doing tech work?
We have currently 33 employees covering all time zones, and that is growing. Yeah.
So you're still small, you're still nimble, but it sounds like you're continuing to see growth month over month. So it doesn't feel like this is a failing business model for you by any means.
There's not a day that goes by that we don't hear from half a dozen MSPs looking to work with Benchmark. There's something about our approach that I think works well. I think that, and I certainly I hate being locked in, right? I hate it when a new tool comes out in the space and they're like, you got to sign this 2-year contract and commit to X thousand agents or whatever. It drives me crazy because I can't predict in my MSP what it's going to look like necessarily a year from now. We don't do that with Benchmark, so it is effectively a service that you can start and stop. And I think that we'd like to keep it that way because I believe that MSPs want to be able to decide their own destiny. They want to be able to decide where they want to go. So effectively what happens is once we get past the numbers, and we've shared a few of those today, and once we get past these questions, which are very common, people say, well, what have I got to lose, right? Like I can just go at this for a month, 2 months, 3 months, see how it goes. And if it doesn't work out, we'll try something else. So I think that level of flexibility is what's driving a lot of growth for Benchmark 365 at the moment.
I have more. I'm just trying to figure out which one I want to do next. You're not going anywhere then, is really what it sounds like.
Man, I got nowhere to go. A couple of months from so committed, by the way, so committed that in a couple of months' time, I've convinced my wife and what will be 3 kids that we're going to move to North America. We're going to start in the US and we're heading up to Canada, where she's from originally, because I believe in growing this, and I believe that I need to have a presence as CEO of the company in your side of the world. That's a commitment right there. Like, I've got a house with a white picket fence here. We're going to pick up and we're going to move over there because I'm very, very passionate. You're talking about a business that I've committed to a team of people. So I've hired a whole bunch of people who I'm incredibly passionate about working with. And yet, actually, I do want to say one thing is that I do understand the biases and prejudices towards offshore and all of that, but these are like people, right? Like, this is not some random kind of behind the scenes, robot somewhere. These are people. Like, these are people with a job, with families that go to work, that work for me, that support Benchmark 365 and our partners every day. So it's a bit of a foreign thing for me when people ask about, some of the, I guess, the negative sides of it, because I don't see it. I actually don't see it because I've been doing it for so long, and I've lived in that country, and I've spent a great deal of time with my people, that I just see this as my team. This is my staff, right? And what I would say to everyone in the world, US, Canada, Australia, UK, it's not about where your people are. It's about what your people do, right? If you can find an amazing person that doesn't live in your country, but they can do a great job, the way the world is structured now with technology, there's no reason not to hire that person. There's no reason not to give that person a chance to have a great life and to give them an opportunity to work and grow. So, I just wanted to say that piece, because I know that some biases have been set by the very large telcos that are out there and some of the very large NOC providers. And I want to buck that trend and humanize what we're doing here.
Excellent. And someone here said his corporate service desk back in the day, they were in Manila. And the service desk agents had a tendency to live at the office by sleeping under their desk. And they were poor.
This is a funny story, by the way. When we first started,
it's gonna get worse, isn't it?
By the way, I've spent a lot of time in Manila, and I have even very large corporations that should be managed better. I'm not, and I've gone into offices after a bit of a drinking session with buddies over there, looked around, and none of the people are to be seen. They're all under the desk sleeping. There's no one overseeing it. I even went to the airport once, and I fly Qantas because I'm from Australia, and I went to the airport, and I went to the Qantas administrative office because I had a problem with my ticket, and they were all asleep. And I was like, this is like a global company, and they're all asleep. So the problem with the larger corporations is that they don't assign enough value to their offshore teams, and they're usually just like an on-call service. They're not like a core team. So it's like they sleep, and then they kind of prod each other when the phone rings and someone deals with it. We obviously can't run like that, right? So like our nighttime is your daytime. Our nighttime here, like it's just coming on 7 a.m. here. Our nighttime is your daytime. So we need a full team on hand. We need supervisors on hand. We need to make sure that everybody's awake and functioning and has coffee and works like it's their normal day. So that no sleeping. But when we first started out, we obviously had to build a night team before we took on customers, right? We couldn't just market to North America and then win a client and then hire a team. It wouldn't work that way. So I said to my guys, look, I know you're not going to have anything to do, and I know that one of you are going to be tempted to sleep. My only request is that you don't sleep together, right? And they were like, we don't sleep together. And I was like, no, I mean, like, you don't both fall asleep at the same time. You've got to, like, one of you has got to be awake just in case, something comes in. So in the early days, we were totally okay with that. If you want to get some sleep at night, knock yourself out if there was no work to do. But it's not like that today because we got customers to serve. It just wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. So fully understand that. I've seen that in Manila. Yeah, there you go.
So even though you're outsourced, are they paid well for where they live?
Totally. Yeah. So this is a big one as well, right? Obviously, parts of the Philippines are a third world country, and it's tragic. Some of the challenges that they face regionally have resulted in a very, very low minimum wage in some parts of the country that would not be acceptable for us. And it's certainly not acceptable for our team who are primarily degree educated, qualified, competent, certified engineers and customer service personnel. So they are paid very well. You would see in a third world country, you would see that a lot of people get to work on a tuk-tuk or a jeepney, or they walk, or they can't get to work. Most of our people drive, modern cars. I've mentioned before, they've got iPhones. They are middle class. They're middle class or upper middle class employees that live in the city. So they're not out regional somewhere. They live in the city and they go to work just like you and I do.
And how many of them drive Teslas?
I've never seen a Tesla in the Philippines. I'm sure there's one there. I see a lot of Honda. I see a lot of Toyota, and I see a lot of Kia. But I don't see any Teslas. I see a few Mercedes and BMWs too, but I don't see any Teslas at this stage.
Fair enough. I think I've touched on everyone's questions. I just want to recap. We beat up poor James here on pricing a lot, and I don't think he was necessarily trying to be shifty about the pricing. There's just a lot of metrics that go into his pricing, and it's not just a one size fits all. If you have, it's not like they're charging $10 a ticket flat rate. It's, they look at, okay, we'll give you up to 100 tickets, but there's also hours involved, and we pay our people differently when it's tier 1 versus tier 3, and projects could be this. And
I'll correct you on that part. We don't differentiate on pricing between tier 1 and tier 3. So whatever.
I'm thinking more or less with your metrics, even if it's not something that you're using directly with us, you're at least looking at those metrics in the background, just for the back office. You're looking at it and you're saying, okay, Steve with Taylor IT Group, he keeps outsourcing all of this tier 1 stuff because he's just lazy and doesn't want to do it. And Zach from his company, can't remember your company name, Zach, sorry. Zach keeps outsourcing all this tier 2 and tier 3 stuff, and it's actually costing us more to do business with Zach. So you might go to him and say he needs to bump up a tier or something along those lines at some point. And I think that's all reasonable, because you're doing the same thing to us that we should be doing to our clients, in that if we have a 5-user customer, and I'm stealing this from you, Zach, if we have a 5-user customer that's generating 50 tickets a month, we're not just going to sit there and let them eat all our margin. We're going to have a conversation with them. We're not going to yell, we're not going to fire them, but we're going to have a conversation, and we're going to try and come up with something that works for everybody.
Correct.
And if there's not if they won't budge, then we may have to disengage. But you want to come up with a way that works for everyone, because at the end of the day, it is going to be far less expensive to bring you on board than for me to hire another engineer or technician or whatever you want to call your staff. And it's funny, because you're able to make the same pitch to us as we are to our customers. We're going to be a fraction of the cost of you hiring one guy, and we come with a team. And you're saying that the exact same thing. I mean, it's a fraction of the cost as it would be for me to hire a full-time tech, and you're bringing a team. So I mean, it's it makes so much sense to me.
Yeah. Imagine one of the things that we bump into a lot is that MSPs don't calculate their administrative and non-billable time. Like it tends to be one of those, I just took a quick call this morning. Oh, I just got to like call that vendor for so and so. I've just got all of that kind of stuff. And we talked before about should techs answer the phone or should you have a dedicated admin or dispatch?
Right.
I learned to, before we even hit the Philippines, I learned that was a huge benefit to our business to have that first level taken out, that answer of the call and coordinate the tech schedule was one of the most important investments we ever made in our MSP like 10 years ago. It was very important. If you just factor that alone into benchmarks pricing, so a person on a seat or multiple people on a seat just dealing with the initial call, that is significant cost saving to hiring an administrative person in the US or anywhere else. So a lot
Absolutely,
of
because not only are you going to have people that are going to make sure the phone gets answered every single time, but it's going to be 24 hours a day. It's not just me hiring someone to work 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or whatever my shifts are. It's literally bringing you on board for a fraction of that price to answer the phones 24 hours a day.
Correct.
Which maybe from midnight to 6 doesn't really matter, but you're going to have that customer that calls you at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night at least once a month.
You know what's fascinating? We softly, in our own MSP, we softly increased our business hours. So obviously before we had 24, we had 20 and we had 16 and, it was a scaled up thing. We didn't tell anybody that we'd increased our hours. And you know what? The phones were ringing at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night. We just weren't capturing it before. We just didn't know that was happening. And as a value add to our clients, our MSP clients, it was like, we can now address your issues at any time of day. And we're seeing our partners do that now. So they're going as a selling point saying, we couldn't do this before, we were on call, or, we just didn't do it. Now they can just say, look, it's done. We've got a team in place. Call us anytime. We'll get your IT fixed.
And what's actually the most exciting to me about how you're doing this, James, is that with, I want to say, every other help desk company out there, or at least all the other ones I've heard of, it's like they'll help this customer but not that customer because I'm only paying for them to help this customer over here. So they don't want that customer to call and get on their line. They actually will scold me if that happens. And it sounds like you're going to take care of everyone that's in my PSA and anyone that's not.
Yes, 100%. But what do you mean by that? So you've got help desk services that just cherry pick which customers they want to work with?
No, because you're paying per user or per device.
I see.
So I'll bring on a managed services client, and they get the magical help desk. But my break fix client, they get to go to my voicemail.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you would be able to take care of those random break fix clients as long as they're already in the PSA and you can kind of figure it out for them. But it sounds like you're able to do that, and then you would add your time entry to the ticket in the AutoTask or ConnectWise or whatever. And not only did my break fix customer just get taken care of super quick, but I just got to bill them for that.
So just two quick things on that. One is we wouldn't say, no, we're not servicing customer X or customer Y. The only question we're going to ask is this customer worth it to you, right? And I'll give you an example. We had a partner come on board and he's like, the tickets are coming in, the labor is going in, and we're like, this customer calls 10 times a day. And we've utilized 20 hours just servicing this customer over the last couple of weeks. And the partner said, no, but you can't because we only charge them $500 a month. And it was like, well, what were you doing before, right? Like, were you doing this much work? Yeah, I was, but I was just doing it at night, and I was just doing it, when I was on the couch, and and it was like, well, so you've been losing money on this customer big time, And what happens is when you start sending it through to benchmark, it becomes visible very quickly. So rather than us saying, no, we're not going to serve the customer, what we're saying is, how can we help you get this customer up to a suitable plan? How can we help you profit from this customer or manage this customer out? Because whether you do it, whether you hire an employee to do it, or whether Benchmark does it, you're going to lose money on this customer. So let us help you find a way to have every one of your customers profitable. Our metric is we want you to make a multiple of 3 to 5 times whatever you're paying Benchmark, right?
Sure.
And I don't know anybody else out there that's doing that. We're not saying no matter what, we're going to charge you X per endpoint, because the endpoint is irrelevant. It's the volume of labor. It's the volume of work. There's what costs your business money. But likewise is what you should be charging for. If you're not hitting an effective rate, we could talk for hours on this. Maybe we could do another webinar, but let's just talk quickly about rates. If you're not hitting an effective hourly rate of, in some markets, 120, and you will not be able to scale and grow your MSP effectively. So forget about seat counts, forget about the per user or per device pricing. It all comes down to a labor cost, and it all comes down to an effective billable rate. And we spend a lot of time with our partners getting that driven home so that you're profitable. And if you're not profitable, that's the only reason I would say, you know what, we shouldn't service this customer, because Benchmark is charging you and you're not charging the customer. So we shouldn't service them. You should drop the customer, right? So that sometimes takes a little while to get that into the psyche.
Now, and I know we've gone way over, and I'm sorry, but I'm super thankful because you're answering some great questions for us. And Justin said, and I'm going to correct some things before you even answer, so don't jump in yet. Justin said, Matt. Matt says, something like this can also make you aware of costs you're losing that you shouldn't be, because Benchmark is going to say, hey, this is a project we have to charge extra for. And you're thinking, I would have done that for free or less money or whatever. Sure. And then Justin said, Matt, I wonder if the 365 techs will discern between the two, or just fix the issue, start helping the customer without converting it to a sales opportunity first. And I think it's safe to say, one, I think what he's asking is, if someone said, hey, I've never worked with you before, can you fix this problem? What would your guys do? Would you say no? Would you say, well, Steve has this process in place, we need you to sign this agreement, and then we can start working as soon as we get your credit card on file for Steve, yada, yada, yada? Or would you just say, you know what, you're going to need to talk to the owner so that way he can go through the sales spiel? What would your deal be for that? Or I'm not sure if he's saying XYZ company, they're a managed services company, and they went out and bought the brand new Microsoft Office 365 for everyone, not the email portion, but the software. And they called in, they just real quick want us to install it on 20 machines, just real quick. You had both of those, I'm sure, right? Justin did confirm it was number 2, but I'd love an answer to both.
All right, cool. So first of all, there's a lot there. Number 1, customer calls up, never heard of them before, not in the system, don't know who they are. We would take a note, right? It's not going to go to a tech. So the techs are not the front line here.
No, they're not. You've got the dispatchers.
Very professional customer service team that know what they're doing, and they have a process to follow. They're like, and what's your name and where are you calling from? And can I grab a little bit more information? Okay, thank you, great. And then we would reach it. They would have dialed through a number that we recognize, because they would have, ideally, they wouldn't know our phone number. They would know our partner's phone number. So they would have called through their help desk.
Yeah, they would have called my company, and they would have hit 2 for support, and it would have gone to you guys.
Correct. So we know who you are, but we don't know who they are, right? So we log it all down. We pick up the phone immediately. This is Jason. We just had a call from someone. We have no idea who they are. Can you shed some light on this? Can we get some baseline documentation down? Just basic, just even if it's an emergency, just basic, like Who are they? What sort of platform do they have? Are they on-premise? Are they in the cloud? Do they use 365? What are the passwords? What's the firewall details? At least give us enough information.
And you're asking me all this?
What's
I don't
that?
know. It's new. And you're asking me, the partner?
So the line between us and you is, this is your business, right? This is not my business. Yeah. This is your business, and you're an account manager.
You're my minions.
You're an account manager. You're sales, maybe even service delivery, depending on the scale, or maybe we're service delivery. But we will never be that key point of contact, that cotton wool for your customer. That is your job. You're the one that goes out there and sees them. You're the one that goes out there and sells them the latest project. You're the one that gets out there and makes them feel good about the service that you're providing. And we underpin that. That's it. We just make sure that we're delivering day in, day out on the service tickets. That's question. I think I answered one of the questions. The other one is, hey, we've just gotten 2365. I said, yeah, man, that's that old trick, right? Like, I've just got a couple of computers here. We need you to, it's from my wife's brother-in-law's just brought them in, and we just need you to format them and reinstall. Yep, okay. So that would get flagged as a change request because it's an environmental thing. And that would go to first of all, as an escalation point within the pod that would say, hey, this looks like it's going to take all night. And then
I don't mind.
Yeah, of course you don't mind. And then there would be a conversation with you, our partner, or whoever you designated us to talk to say, this is and it's not even a money thing. Like, again, it's not like, let's see how we can, get some extra money. It's like, this is a business problem. This is a problem. This is a problem for you and me right now because A, I got to ask a bunch of guys to work all night, and B, I don't even know if your customers even told you about this. So we need to work together to get this solved, right? We've been doing this before I started Benchmark. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've seen it. I feel like I've seen it all. The printer that shows up from, the multifunction company shows up with 3 new printers, no phone call, no advice to us. Hey guys, there's some new printers here. Can you set it up? Right? We get that. We've heard it all. We've had it all, right? And so our guys have a run sheet. They've got procedures to follow. Maybe one of your other questions is, do you get it right 100% of the time? No. Do you? There's going to be stuff that slips through the cracks. There's going to be a tech that gets a job that, somehow finds himself, knee deep in the proverbial. And again, because we have metrics in place and thresholds in place, we'll pick that up. One of the thresholds we've got in place is if we're spending more than a couple of hours on any ticket, manager is alerted to that just to have a look. What's happening? I thought this was a quick job. Like, you've done it for 2 hours. And you also can get those alerts. So you've got a dashboard that you can look at. You've got workflows that are sent to you that will tell you what's happening day to day. You're in charge. We're doing everything that we've been kind of programmed to do, but sometimes there might be an anomaly there. You're in charge. You can step in at any time and tell us what to do about it.
It almost sounds like you guys are using like ITIL standards or something of the sort for making sure that you're managing. Is this a project? Is this a move, add, change? Is this an incident? Is that that kind of stuff? It sounds like you guys are really doing a good job of managing that, and that right there helps you manage the expectations of the partner, who can then manage the expectations of the customer. Sound accurate?
Yeah, so I mean, maybe I've drawn on my experience. I am ITIL certified. Feels like 100 years ago now, but I do have a very strong belief in that. Like you, I've used a couple of the different PSA platforms, and I've drunk the Kool-Aid, gone to every workshop, seminar, many times to IT Nation, and I believe it. I actually believe it's right. What I don't believe is that often MSPs that are smaller than us try to implement way too many processes around this stuff, and it becomes a administrative nightmare and a burden. So what we hope to do with Benchmark is we've done it. We've already built the platform, from a people perspective. We've already built it, and all you need to do is leverage it. We try to call it turnkey. Doesn't turnkey as quick as a Tesla. It'll take 15 days to onboard you, but we try to make sure that you get access to these ITIL best practices immediately. That's our goal. That's really the nuts and bolts of it, Steve.
Awesome. I think by now we've answered everything. Zach said they're basically using ITIL to treat their client base like multiple lines of business inside a single organization. And he said it's the same methodology he uses for his client base. So it sounds like you guys are doing it right, and I like it. I like what you're doing. If price is the objective for someone saying they can't work with you because they can't afford it, then I would say they're simply not big enough to need you.
Yeah.
Or they're doing it very wrong. Or they're doing it very, very wrong, which is a whole nother webinar. I like how you guys are running things. I like what you're doing. I like everything I've heard today, to be completely honest. I just can't afford you. But no, I do think that anyone that can work with you should at least have a conversation with you, so that way you both can learn more about each other and figure out if that would be a good relationship that would work out for both partners or both parties. With that said, how can people reach you, James?
Yeah, cool. So number one is, I've mentioned email before. You can send an email to james@benchmark365.com. If anyone wants to reach out today and you're looking for pricing and a bit more info, I'll send that straight out. That's no problem. The other thing is, I'm awake maybe 20 hours a day, but there might be 4 or 5 hours a day that I'm not. On our Facebook page, we have a messenger chat. It's not a bot. So you can ask any questions there. So when I or one of our representatives is awake and at the keys, they'll answer your questions. So ask as many questions as you like. Hit us. We do have a lot of, because we've been doing this a while, we have bits of collateral that drill down into some of the questions that you've asked today, because some of them are important. Steve, you asked about call quality and audio. We can send that out. But yeah, by all means, Facebook page or email me. Appreciate your feedback about the website. I'm going to talk with our marketing team and see if we can improve the communication on there, so you get a bit more of an idea about what we do. And as you just said before, Steve, just reach out. A call is free. Doesn't cost you anything to explore this further. And I'd love to see some of the attendees jumping on board with Benchmark.
But you're in Australia and the Philippines. Doesn't it cost us something to actually call you?
No, so I can either call you. I have this amazing plan on my cell phone, which is unlimited international calls, so I can call you anytime from that. Wonderful. I use GoToMeeting, so you can. I'll share this with anybody that reaches out, but you can schedule into my calendar, and we can jump on GoToMeeting together, and I can share some slides and do a bit more than what we've been able to cover today, if need be.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I did pop something into the resources section, so you guys should see a red circle with a number 1 inside it up in the top if you haven't reviewed that yet. That is just a link to Facebook. There's also his email address in the chat, and that same link to Facebook in the chat. Facebook.com/benchmark365 or james@benchmark365.com. Does that sound right?
James@benchmark365.com, correct. And I'm going to try and just throw up another document if everybody's going to hang around for a few minutes.
I'll make sure I add it up into the site as well, so people can access it later on too.
Okay, why don't we do that? Save me scratching around for PDFs at the moment, but I'll send some stuff over to you, Steve, to share.
That sounds great. Thanks so much, James. Thanks so much, everyone else, for attending. I really appreciate you being here and showcasing your business. I do wish you the greatest success, and I think you're going to do well here. This Thursday, guys, we have the webinar on audit for IT, and you can actually go to audit, AUDIT, FORIT.com. Check out that tool. It is freaking awesome. It can help you make sales forms. It can help you make quarterly business reviews, and it's all going to just make your clients and prospects love you because it's going to make sense. It's red, yellow, and green, and it just tells them if things are good or not. And I mean, it couldn't get any easier. So
that's amazing. Sounds good.
Yeah, you should check it out. I think you would like it.
Cool.
So take care, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Thanks for staying late. And as always, this will be up on YouTube later. Take care.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Have you been looking for a way to stay focused on your goals and grow your MSP? Accountability groups from RocketMSP can help. We offer weekly accountability sessions that meet online with a group of your peers. Your success begins with accountability. Go to www.rocketmsp.io to join your accountability group today.